On Tuesday, December 20th, 2011, I was visiting a friend who had just had a baby, delivering a meal and some Christmas gifts. I was compelled to call my doctor while sitting on her couch, and I set up an appointment for the following morning for a reason I still don't know. I was at the doctor's office at 8 a.m. Wednesday morning, December 21st, which happens to be our wedding anniversary. After 9 months of a perfect pregnancy, we learned that our son, Parker David Markovich, no longer had a heartbeat. My labor was induced around 11 a.m. that morning. On Friday, December 23rd, at 7:17 a.m., I gave birth to Parker. He was cremated on December 24th, my birthday. The profound pain and suffering that occurs when you lose a child is the greatest challenge God will ever put before you. God chose Parker to live in heaven. Therefore, I did not leave the hospital carrying my baby boy, but instead a small blue box filled with what were meant to be precious mementos. I would like to now tell you about the second most painful challenge God has ever put before me. When we look at his tiny hand and feet prints, our memory is of a frustrated nurse telling us, he's just not cooperating. In that little blue box, which, as you can imagine, I loathe, there was a card about the size of an index card. It was folded in half. On the front, it read, "A wisp of hair." Inside the card was a tiny Ziploc bag. I happened to glance over at the nurse while she was clipping his hair. She was placing it in a sandwich-sized Ziploc bag. When I kindly asked her to put it in the bag inside the card provided, she told me the hair was sticking to her gloves and there was no way she was going to get it inside that tiny little bag. At one point in the morning, a phlebotomist came to take my blood. I kindly explained to her that my husband was on the phone with the funeral home making arrangements for our son. Parker was still in the room with us, and those moments were precious. I asked her to come back whenever she could with no rush. She totally understood and respectfully left. A nurse stormed back into my room, flung open the door that day, and explained that I was not her only patient and that she was on a schedule. After a morning of holding, loving, and making what few memories we have of our baby boy, we had to say goodbye. The nurse wheeled him off in that same little cart that all babies are placed in, and she said, "We're off to the nursery." She then looked back at me with that, "Oops, I guess I shouldn't have said that" look, and she said, "I mean, downstairs." She returned several minutes later saying she'd forgotten to put an ID bracelet on him. And in my train wreck state of mind, I asked her to make sure it got put on the right baby. Well, she replied, "Don't worry, Mrs. Markovich, no other babies here today are going where your baby's going." And of course I say, "Oh, yes, that's right, downstairs." So Parker was a totally developed, normal-looking, and full-term baby. He was a person. Yet he was repeatedly referred to as fetal remains. As my husband and I gathered our things and prepared to leave, exiting the room with my little blue box, we were told, "Congratulations." When I tell this story, people usually respond with something like, "Well, I would have given her a piece of my mind," or "She wouldn't have liked to hear what I would have had to say." And you say that now. However, after sitting in a hospital bed over the course of 2 days, undergoing a slow induction of labor, knowing that the baby inside of you is gone, you're no longer in your right mind. It wasn't until the days following that I truly realized how horribly we were treated. As more time passed, I grew more and more angry. I was ready to take on the world. I was going to go to that hospital and talk to anyone who would listen. I wasn't going to let this continue happening to mothers. I was dumbfounded by the fact that our hospitals, as well as their staff and protocols, are structured around live birth. And when that is not the end result, everything seems to fall apart. After all, they even lost our cord blood. I was finally able to call a hospital. After a long conversation with someone in patient advocacy, I learned that they would soon be implementing a program there called Rachel's Gift. She didn't know much about it, but she gave me the website. As soon as we hung up that day, I was in front of the computer. I watched the video online of the mother being presented with a box from Rachel's Gift, with tears literally shooting off of my face. A true gift coming from a loving heart. I filled out the volunteer form online that afternoon, and Lori Beth called me that evening. We had a wonderful conversation, and it was at that moment that I learned I wouldn't have to take on the world alone. Thank you.